If you go camping at Lake Hill, do not camp in lot number 237. I grew up in a small town, like a one stoplight, tumbleweed blowing down the road kind of town. Being an introvert is especially painful when you don't have many people around. It's hard enough to make friends when there's unlimited options. But when your class is about 70 kids or so, well, you can imagine how tough my early school career was. Luckily enough, I was rather good at baseball, and I made some great friends on my little league team all the way until the end of high school ball. Through the years, I stayed tight with two guys. I'll call them Chase and Taylor. And Harley, Chase's girlfriend. We were all skeptical at first when Chase started bringing her around, but it didn't last long. She was cool, and she legitimately loved baseball like we did. In fact, she was a star softball player in her own right. Our small town is in Arizona, which might be funny if you realize the name of that town, as I previously mentioned, is Lake Hill. I'm sure you know there aren't many lakes in Arizona. There isn't water at all, for the most part. But we did have a lake. It was beautiful, almost an anomaly, in a landscape of scorched earth and rock lawns. My parents brought us to the campgrounds at Lake Hill often, never to actually camp overnight, but there was a beach we could enjoy. There was also an arcade, ski rentals, and so much more to entertain us pre-internet era kids. Being that it was a small town, my parents were friends with Chase and Taylor's parents, so often we would all go together. Of course, Haley would tag along too. In the insanely hot summers of the Grand Canyon State, being at Lake Hill was an oasis of pure satisfaction. But when we asked if we could camp sometime, we all got the same response from every parent. "This really isn't the best place to camp," my dad said. "Yeah, the campsites aren't really kept up," Chase's parents said. "The owners really just like to focus on the entertainment part of the campground." We all brushed it off as kids, not thinking too much about it. We never knew of anyone that actually camped overnight there, come to think of it. We all quickly dismissed it, going back to the concession shack to get more corn dogs and Bahama Mama slushies. Chase, Taylor, Harley, and I were thick as thieves by our senior year. Harley and Chase were going off to ASU in the fall. Taylor decided to skip school altogether and work for the family business. A long life of fixing air conditioning units until you die, I thought to myself. I was hesitant, but I decided to also go to college. I hoped to get accepted into ASU, not only because it's a great school, but I would at least know 2 people out of thousands that were there. Unfortunately, I did not get that letter of congratulations. My safety school, however, did take me. Here we go, Phoenix University. I know what you're thinking. I didn't want it to come to this either. But I was actually going to be on the actual campus at Tempe. I guess that made me feel better in some weird way. Fast forward 2 semesters and all of us made it back home for the summer. It felt great to reconnect with the old gang. After meeting up at Taylor's place, we all shared our various college stories. We were having a great time reconnecting, and it was awesome to be back together like kids. Eventually, we got onto the topic of our times at Lake Hill Campground. It felt like we were back there, swimming in the lake, playing volleyball, and laying under the stars until our parents yelled at us for pack up and start heading home. Hey, why don't we go there this weekend, but actually camp for once? It is a campground after all, said Chase. Yeah, why didn't we ever do that? Harley chimed in. I reminded them that our parents always shut the idea down, saying the grounds were never kept up. We're grown-ups now, Taylor said. I have a truck, we can pack a couple of tents, and get a campsite for next to nothing. We were all silent for a moment, then looked at each other with gleeful mischief, and all agreed to do it. Being that the internet now ruled life, we got online and got the number to the campground. I was the one that made the call. Hello? An older sounding man said. Hey, can we reserve a campsite for this weekend? There's 4 of us, I said. The man on the other line paused and then somewhat hesitantly said, sure. Have you ever camped here before? No, we thought this would be fun, being the weather was so nice and we had nothing else going on right now. Okay, we have a few sites open. How does 237 sound? I couldn't have cared less if it was 237 or 2,037,037. We were going to camp at Lake Hill. I was so looking forward to our upcoming camping weekends. We were all tasked with jobs. Chase and Harley brought food and snacks. Taylor had the truck, so he didn't need to do much else, although he did have tents for us to stay in. That left me to procure some adult beverages. My parents were always loose with their liquor cabinet, so that was no problem. When we rolled up to Site 237, we were amazed by how beautiful it was. We were also amazed at how deep in the woods it was. It wasn't that close to the lake, and we couldn't believe that none of us had ever been to this side of the campground. All of us were feeling really good. The tents were set, the drinks were flowing, and the weather was great. The high school stories just kept coming. Hey, remember when you ripped your pants and everyone saw your butt hair? Taylor yelled to Chase. I had a mouthful of cheap beer that made a hasty exit out of my nose. A little embarrassed, but getting into the spirit of things, Chase retorted to, yeah, how about when you... Shh! Harley sat up in her camp chair, holding both her arms in somewhat of a T position to all of us guys. We all exchanged worried glances towards each other. Did you hear that? She said. I looked at Chase and Taylor with a what the fuck facial reaction. But then I did hear it. A cracking noise that came from within the woods. I suggested it was just an animal. Maybe it was the time for us to pack it in and call it a night. As Harley was getting her stuff together for her and Chase, I stood by the fire with Taylor. We already forgot the awkwardness just a few moments earlier, and were ready to kill the fire. Then the animal-like sound crept into our area. At first, it was a low growl. Something that couldn't have been a coyote or any animal in this area. I took out my flashlight, brushing it across the woods. It stopped on an impossible sight. There, in the distance, was a beast that made me freeze in place. It seemed like the monster was also frozen, but not in fear. It had to be nearly 7 feet tall, with unnaturally long talon-like fingers. The rows of sharp teeth never ended, even more disturbing compared to its grayish skin. Its eyes were locked on us, waiting to attack. Quietly, I whispered, "Run." I grabbed Taylor and started to head to the truck. We yelled for Chase and Harley to get out of the tent they had just set up and to follow us. Confused, they didn't have a chance to question us. And now we were all running to the Dodge Ram like our lives depended on it. I could feel the stomach-turning stench of the creature's breath on our backs. I threw Chase and Harley in the back as I dove into the passenger seat, Taylor already shooting for the driver's side. After what seemed like a lifetime, Taylor grabbed the right key and fired the truck up and spun the wheels, getting us out of there. All I could see in the rear view mirror was a dark gray thing breathing heavily. It wanted us. Who knows how many victims it had already gotten. We all made it to our respective homes safely. We went our separate ways and never spoke again of what happened. I only ask that if you're going to camp at Lake Hill, Arizona, do not camp at site number 237.